The first thing you need to understand about humans is that they are supposed to be extinct. The second thing, their extinction was supposed to be our greatest achievement. The third? Well, that's where things get complicated. My name is Corvain Thull, and I'm what you might call a xenobiologist, though after today, I'm not sure what I am anymore. Maybe a fool, maybe a traitor, maybe the only living being in the galaxy who knows the truth about what we did 3 centuries ago. It started with a routine planetary survey on Nexus 7, a backwater mining colony that barely registered on our star maps. The kind of place where criminals go to disappear and corporations go to exploit. Nothing special, nothing that should have changed everything. But then I saw her. Dr. Elena Voss was supposed to be just another human colonist. Short, unremarkable, with that peculiar pale skin and those tiny brown eyes that humans are known for. She worked in the mining operations medical bay, treating radiation burns and equipment accidents. Standard human occupations, standard human appearance, except for her shadow. I noticed it during the noon cycle inspection. The binary suns of Nexus 7 cast everything in sharp, double relief. 2 shadows for every object, 2 silhouettes dancing on the rocky ground. But Elena Voss, she cast 3 shadows, and the third one didn't match her body at all. The third shadow was tall, impossibly tall, with elongated limbs that moved independently of her actual movements. And at the end of those shadow limbs were what looked like claws, not the stubby fingers of a human, but the razor-sharp talons of something far more dangerous. Something that looked exactly like a Kethmori. Now, here's the thing about the Kethmori. They are extinct. We made sure of that. 300 years ago, during what our history books call the Great Cleansing, we systematically eliminated every last one of them. The official records state that they were a violent, aggressive species that threatened galactic peace. The truth, they were the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen, and we were terrified of them. But there I was, staring at Elena Voss's impossible shadow, watching it move with the fluid grace of a predator that shouldn't exist. My mandibles clicked involuntarily, a nervous habit I'd developed during my years studying extinct species. But this wasn't extinction, this was resurrection. Dr. Thel. Elena's voice snapped me back to reality. She was looking at me with those deceptively innocent human eyes. Is everything all right? You seem disturbed. Disturbed. That was one way to put it. Try terrified, confused, and questioning everything I thought I knew about the universe. Just conducting routine observations, I managed, my translator struggling with the tremor in my voice. Nothing unusual, she smiled, that simple human expression that we'd always found so primitive. But there was something else in that smile, something that made my exoskeleton itch with recognition. Of course, she said. Though I have to say, your observation techniques are quite thorough. Most inspectors don't spend quite so much time studying shadows. My blood went cold. She knew. Somehow she knew what I was seeing. Shadows can be quite revealing, I replied, testing the waters. They show us things that aren't always visible in the light. Her smile widened. Indeed they do, Doctor. Indeed they do. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not that sleep comes easily to my species anyway, but this was different. This was the kind of restless anxiety that comes from knowing you are sitting on a secret that could unravel everything. I accessed the colony's records, diving deep into Elena's background. Human female, aged 32 standard years, born on Earth Colony 7. Medical degree from the Terran Institute. Clean record, no criminal history, no unusual biological markers. Everything perfectly normal. Too normal. I cross-referenced her genetic profile with our biological databases. Standard human DNA. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then I ran a deeper scan, looking for anomalies that might not show up in routine checks. What I found made my respiratory slits constrict. Elena Voss had DNA markers that didn't exist in any known human population, markers that were similar to something else. Something that our databases claimed no longer existed. Kethmori genetic sequences. But that was impossible. The Kethmori were extinct. We'd made sure of that. Our fleets had glassed every one of their worlds. Our scientists had catalogued every scrap of their genetic material before destroying it. There was no way any of their DNA could exist in a human, unless I spent the next 3 days following Elena discreetly. Well, as discreetly as a 2-meter-tall insectoid alien can follow a human on a mining colony. But Elena didn't seem to mind. In fact, she seemed to enjoy having an audience. During the day, she worked in the medical bay with professional efficiency. She treated miners with radiation sickness, patched up workers who'd been careless with heavy machinery, and dispensed medications with the calm competence of someone who'd seen it all before. But when the sun set and the colony's artificial lighting kicked in, her shadow changed again. Under the harsh white LED lights, her shadow became something else entirely. It writhed and twisted, taking on shapes that defied physics. Sometimes it looked like a massive serpent, other times like a creature with wings. And always, it moved independently of her body. On the third night I made a mistake. I got too close. Dr. Thurl. Elena's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. I was wondering when you'd work up the courage to approach me directly. I froze. She was standing in the shadow of the main processing plant, but I could see her clearly despite the darkness. That should have been impossible with my species' vision, but somehow I could make out every detail of her face. I'm not sure what you mean, I said, though my voice betrayed me. Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean. She stepped closer, and I noticed that her shadow preceded her. It reached me before she did, cool and somehow substantial. You have been watching me, studying me, trying to figure out what I am. You are human, I said automatically. She laughed, not the high-pitched giggle of a human, but something deeper, something that resonated in frequencies I shouldn't have been able to hear. Am I? She asked. Are you sure about that? That's when she did something that changed everything. She reached out with her shadow. Not her hand, her shadow. The dark silhouette detached itself from her body and extended toward me like a living thing. When it touched my exoskeleton, I felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with static charge. Suddenly I wasn't standing in the mining colony anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere that smelled of ozone and burning metal, somewhere that echoed with the screams of a dying civilization. I was on Kethmor Prime, 300 years ago, during the Great Cleansing, and I was watching my own species commit genocide. The vision lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. I saw Kethmori cities burning. I saw their ships falling from the sky like metal rain. I saw their people running, fighting, dying, and I saw something else, something that made my understanding of the universe crumble. I saw them change. In their final moments, as our weapons turned their world to glass, the Kethmori didn't just die, they adapted, they evolved, they became something else, something that could survive in forms we couldn't detect or destroy. They became shadows. Now you are beginning to understand, Elena said, her voice pulling me back to the present. The Kethmori weren't eliminated, they were transformed, and they have been waiting, watching, learning. I staggered backward, my legs suddenly unsteady. That's impossible. We destroyed them completely. Our records show total extinction. Your records show what you wanted to see, she replied, what you needed to believe to sleep at night. But tell me, Doctor, in all your years of studying extinct species, have you ever found complete elimination? Ever found a species that left absolutely no trace? The question hit me like a physical blow, because she was right. In all my research, I'd never found a species that had been completely eradicated. There were always remnants, always survivors, always some trace left behind. The Kethmori were too advanced to simply die. Elena continued. They saw your attack coming centuries before it happened. They prepared. They found a way to survive that you couldn't imagine or detect. But you look human, I protested weakly. I am human, she said, and a shadow writhed behind her. But I'm also something else, something more. The Kethmori didn't just survive, Doctor. They evolved. They learned to inhabit other forms, to hide in plain sight, to become invisible to those who destroyed them. She gestured to the mining colony around us. How humans do you think live on this colony, Doctor? I checked my datapad automatically. Approximately 3,000. And how many of them do you think cast shadows like mine? The question hung in the air like a poison cloud. I didn't want to know the answer, but I had to ask. How many? Elena's smile was no longer human. It was something else. Something predatory. Something that remembered what it meant to be hunted. All of them, she said. The world spun around me. 3,000 humans, 3,000 shadows that didn't match their bodies. 3,000 Kethmori survivors, hiding in human form. That's impossible, I whispered. Is it? Elena asked. Think about it, Doctor. Humans are the most successful species in the galaxy. They have colonized more worlds than any other race. They have integrated into every civilization. They are everywhere, and you never questioned why. I hadn't. None of us had. We'd accepted humanity's rapid expansion as natural, as inevitable. We'd been so focused on our own civilizations that we'd never stopped to wonder how a species that had barely achieved interstellar travel could spread so quickly across the galaxy. The Kethmori didn't just survive, Elena continued. They thrived. They became humanity, and now they are ready to reclaim what was taken from them. What do you want? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Justice, she said simply. For 3 centuries we have watched your species prosper, while ours was supposedly extinct. We have learned your weaknesses. We have studied your technologies. We have positioned ourselves in every major colony, every important station, every significant world. She paused, and her shadow seemed to grow larger in the darkness. We have been preparing for war. The words hit me like a meteor impact. War. Not just any war, but a war between species that had been building for 3 centuries. A war that would reshape the galaxy. When? I asked. Soon, Elena replied. Very soon. The signal has already been sent. Every colony, every station, every world where humans have settled, they are all waking up, remembering what they really are. I felt my exoskeleton begin to shake. How long do we have? That depends, she said, tilting her head, in a gesture that was disturbingly human, on what you choose to do with this information. What do you mean? You have a choice, Dr. Thel. You can return to your superiors. Tell them what you have learned. Try to warn them about what's coming. Of course, they probably won't believe you. And even if they do, it's already too late. She stepped closer, and I could feel the cold presence of her shadow wrapping around me. Or, she continued, you can help us. Help you do what? Help us be merciful, she said. The Kethmori remember what your species did to them. They remember the burning cities and the dying children. They remember the complete annihilation of their civilization. But they also remember that not all of your people participated in the genocide. Some were innocent. Some were horrified by what their governments did. I thought about the historical records I'd studied, the protests on some worlds, the scientists who'd objected to the extermination, the few voices that had spoken out against the Great Cleansing. What kind of mercy? I asked. The kind that allows some of your people to survive, Elena said. The kind that offers a chance for coexistence instead of complete annihilation. And what would I have to do? Help us identify the planets and colonies that should be spared, the ones where your people might be willing to live peacefully alongside the Kethmori, the ones where we can build something better than what came before. I stared at her, my mind racing. She was offering me a chance to save billions of lives. But she was also asking me to betray my own species, to collaborate with an enemy that had been hiding among us for centuries. Why me? I asked. Because you study extinct species, she said. Because you understand what it means to lose everything. Because you are one of the few of your kind who might actually comprehend what we have endured. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a collapsing star. Choose loyalty to my species, knowing that resistance was futile and billions would die. Or choose cooperation, knowing that I'd be helping the very beings my people had tried to exterminate. I need time to think, I said. Elena nodded. Of course, but not too much time. The awakening has already begun. Soon, every human in the galaxy will remember what they really are. And then, she didn't need to finish the sentence. I could imagine what would happen when 3 centuries of hidden rage finally erupted across the galaxy. How long? I asked. 72 hours, she said. After that, the choice will be out of both our hands. As I walked back to my quarters, my mind churned with the implications of what I'd learned. The greatest mystery of my career had become the greatest crisis of my life. And somewhere in the darkness behind me, Elena Voss stood watching, her shadow casting shapes that defied the laws of physics. 3 days. That's all I had to decide the fate of 2 species. 3 days to choose between loyalty and survival. 3 days to determine whether the galaxy would burn or find a way to heal. But first, I had to figure out if Elena was telling the truth. Because if she was, then everything we thought we knew about the universe was about to change. And if she wasn't, well, that might be even worse. The countdown had begun. I didn't sleep for the next 48 hours. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elena's shadow writhing like a living thing. Every time I tried to rest, I heard her words echoing in my mind. All of them. 3,000 humans on this colony alone. 3,000 hidden Kethmori. And if Nexus 7 was representative of human settlements across the galaxy, then we were looking at billions of them. Billions of survivors, from a species we thought we'd completely destroyed. The irony wasn't lost on me. We'd spent 3 centuries congratulating ourselves on the most successful xenocide in galactic history. Meanwhile, our supposed victims had been quietly taking over the galaxy under our very noses. I had 24 hours left to make my decision. 24 hours to choose between warning my own species about an impossible threat, or helping our former enemies show mercy to the people who'd tried to exterminate them. But first, I needed proof. Elena's story was compelling, but I'm a scientist. I needed evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as hallucination. So I did what any reasonable xenobiologist would do. I broke into the colony's medical database. The security on Nexus 7 was pathetic. Mining colonies don't exactly attract the galaxy's best cybersecurity experts. Within an hour, I had access to every medical record, every genetic scan, every biological profile of every human on the station. What I found made my mandibles click so rapidly, they sounded like a percussion instrument. The genetic markers were there. All of them, hidden beneath layers of human DNA, masked by chromosomal modifications that shouldn't have been possible with current technology. But they were there. Kethmori genetic sequences dormant but intact, woven into the very fabric of human biology. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was the timestamps. According to the genetic analysis, these modifications weren't recent. They weren't the result of some advanced bioengineering project. They were old, ancient, dating back nearly 3 centuries. To right around the time of the Great Cleansing, my hands trembled as I cross-referenced the data with historical records. The first human colonies had been established shortly after the Kethmori extinction. Desperate refugees from overcrowded core worlds, seeking new opportunities on the galactic frontier. Or so the official records claimed. But the genetic evidence told a different story. These weren't desperate refugees. They were something else entirely. Something that had been carefully planned and executed over generations. I was so absorbed in the data that I almost missed the soft footsteps behind me. Finding everything you need, Doctor. I spun around to find Elena standing in the doorway of my temporary laboratory. She wasn't smiling anymore. In fact, she looked almost sad. "The genetic modifications," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They are not natural evolution, they are engineered." "Of course they are," she replied, stepping into the room. "Did you think we stumbled into human form by accident?" The Kethmori were the most advanced bioengineers in the galaxy. When your fleets arrived at our worlds, we had already begun the transformation. "But why humans?" I asked. "Why not something else? Why not just flee to the outer rim?" Elena's expression darkened. "Because humans were perfect. Young species, barely spacefaring, completely beneath your notice. Your people saw them as primitive, harmless, useful only for manual labor and basic colonization. The ideal camouflage." She moved closer, and I noticed that her shadow was moving independently again, reaching toward the computer terminals, as if it could interface with the technology directly. "We didn't just become human," she continued. "We became better humans, faster, stronger, more intelligent. We guided their technological development, their expansion, their integration into galactic society. And your people never suspected a thing." "The human expansion," I said, "the pieces falling into place. The rapid colonization, the successful integration with other species, the technological advancement, all of it," Elena confirmed. "Guided by Kethmori intelligence, Kethmori planning, Kethmori revenge. We spent 3 centuries positioning ourselves throughout the galaxy, learning your weaknesses, mapping your defenses, preparing for this moment." I felt my exoskeleton begin to shake again. "What moment?" Elena's shadow reached the computer terminal before she did. The screen flickered, displaying data I hadn't accessed. Star maps, colony locations, fleet positions, everything my people would need to know to defend themselves, or everything the Kethmori would need to know to destroy us. "The awakening," she said simply. "In 18 hours, every human in the galaxy will receive a genetic trigger, a signal that will activate their dormant Kethmori DNA. They will remember who they really are, what they really are, and what was done to them." "Quantum entanglement at the genetic level," she explained, as if discussing the weather. "Every human carries a quantum beacon tied to every other human. When the signal is sent, it will propagate instantaneously across the galaxy. No delay, no interference, no way to stop it." The implications hit me like a meteor shower. Every human colony, every human ship, every human settlement would simultaneously transform into something else, something that remembered 3 centuries of hidden rage. "Your people will have perhaps an hour before the attacks begin," Elena continued. "Less, if they are unlucky enough to be in systems with large human populations." "This is madness," I said. "The casualties will be in the trillions." "Yes," she agreed, "just like the casualties on our worlds 3 centuries ago." I stared at the star map, watching the little dots that represented human colonies. So many of them, so many weapons pointed at the heart of galactic civilization. "But you said there was a choice," I protested. "You said I could help make it merciful," Elena nodded. "And you can. But the choice has to be made now, right now, before the awakening begins." "What do you need me to do?" She gestured to the computer terminal. "Send a message to your superiors. Tell them what you have learned. But don't tell them to prepare for war. Tell them to prepare for surrender. Surrender. Complete, unconditional surrender. Recognition of Kethmori sovereignty over all human-settled worlds. Reparations for the great cleanse. And most importantly, a formal apology for the genocide committed against our people." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation had finally overwhelmed my ability to process it rationally. "You are asking me to tell the Galactic Council to surrender to a species they think is extinct, based on the word of one human on a backwater mining colony. They will think I have lost my mind." "Probably," Elena agreed, "but you will have sent the message. And when the awakening begins, they will remember your warning. They will know you tried to save them. And if they refuse, Elena's shadow began to writhe again, taking on shapes that hurt to look at directly. Then the Keth Mori will do what your people did to them. Complete annihilation. No survivors, no mercy, no second chances. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like a collapsing star. Billions of lives hung in the balance. 2 species faced extinction, and I was the only one who could possibly prevent it. Why me? I asked again. Why not contact the council directly? Why not reveal yourselves and negotiate? Because negotiations require trust, Elena said. And there is no trust between our species. There can't be, not after what happened. But you study extinct species. You understand what we have lost. You might be the only one of your kind who can comprehend what we are offering. What are you offering? Coexistence, she said. Not as equals, not yet, but as 2 species sharing the same galaxy. Your people can keep some of their worlds, some of their ships, some of their civilization. In exchange, they acknowledge what they did and accept Keth Mori authority over the territories we have claimed. I thought about it, really thought about it. The alternative was total war between 2 species that had been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries, a war that would likely end with the complete destruction of one side or the other. What guarantee do I have that the Keth Mori will honor this agreement? Elena's smile returned, but it was different now. Sadder, more human. None. She's just like we had no guarantee that your people wouldn't try to exterminate us. Just like we had no guarantee that we'd survive the transformation. Just like we had no guarantee that 3 centuries of hiding and planning would lead to anything other than our own destruction. She paused, and for a moment, her shadow seemed to flicker. But hope is all any species has, Doctor. Hope that tomorrow will be better than today. Hope that our children will inherit something better than what we are leaving them. Hope that 2 species can find a way to coexist without destroying each other. I looked at the computer terminal. The message I needed to send would be simple. Just a few lines of text that would either save billions of lives or condemn me as a traitor to my own species. 15 hours, Elena said softly. That's all the time we have left. I began to type. The message was brief, direct, impossible to misinterpret. Council Emergency Priority 1. Human species confirmed as evolved Keth Mori survivors. Genetic transformation imminent. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact. Surrender preferable to extinction. Full data package attached. Corven I Tor. Xenobiologist. First class. Nexus 7 colony. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. I would either be remembered as the being who saved 2 species from mutual annihilation, or as the traitor who helped our ancient enemies destroy us. Are you sure about this? I asked Elena. No, she said honestly, but I'm sure about the alternative, and I'd rather die trying to build something better than die repeating the mistakes of the past. I pressed send. The message disappeared into the quantum communication network, racing toward the galactic core at faster than light speeds. Within hours, it would reach the council chambers. Within hours, my people would know that their greatest enemy had been hiding among them for 3 centuries. What happens now? I asked. Elena's shadow began to shift again. But this time it looked different. Less predatory, more hopeful. Now we wait, she said, and we see if 2 species that have spent 3 centuries hating each other can find a way to build something better. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Council ships began arriving in system, their hulls bristling with weapons. But they didn't fire. They didn't attack. They waited. Elena stood beside me as we watched the ships take position around Nexus 7. Her shadow had stopped writhing. It looked almost normal now, almost human. The awakening has begun, she said quietly. Across the galaxy, my people are remembering who they are, what was done to them. And they are waiting for orders. Orders that will depend on how your people respond to our offer. The communication screen flickered to life. The face of Admiral Kress, head of the Council Defense Force, appeared on the display. Her expression was grim. "Dr. Thel," she said, "we have received your message. We have also received similar messages from 17 other star systems, all reporting the same impossible phenomenon." "It's not impossible," I said. "It's just improbable, but the evidence is overwhelming." "The evidence is also terrifying," Admiral Kress replied. "According to our preliminary analysis, there are approximately 47 billion humans in Council space. If your theory is correct—" "It's not a theory," Elena said, stepping into view of the camera. "It's a fact, and those 47 billion humans are about to remember that they are something else entirely." Admiral Kress's expression hardened. "And you are?" "Dr. Elena Voss," she replied, "formerly of the Kethmori Scientific Council, currently serving as a liaison between our species. The Kethmori are extinct." "No," Elena said simply. "We are evolved. And we are tired of hiding." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear the Admiral's mind racing, trying to process the implications of what she was hearing. "What do you want?" Admiral Kress finally asked. "Justice," Elena replied. "Recognition. Reparations. And most importantly, an acknowledgement of what your people did to mine. And if we refuse—" Elena's shadow began to writhe again, and suddenly the screen was filled with images, star maps showing human colonies across the galaxy, fleet positions, defense networks. Everything the Kethmori would need to know to destroy my people completely. "Then we finish what you started 3 centuries ago," Elena said. "But this time, we will be the ones doing the exterminating." Admiral Kress was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "How long do we have?" "The Council has 6 hours to respond," Elena said. "After that, the decision will be made for you." The screen went dark. Elena turned to me, her expression unreadable. "You did the right thing," she said. "Did I?" I asked. "Or did I just help you destroy my own species?" "Time will tell," she replied. "But at least now both our species have a chance. That's more than either of us had yesterday." 6 hours later, the Council's response came through. Not surrender, exactly, but something close enough. A formal acknowledgement of the injustices committed during the Great Cleansing, an offer to negotiate territorial divisions, a promise of reparations. It wasn't everything the Kethmori wanted, but it was enough. The awakening continued across the galaxy, but the attacks never came. Instead, there were negotiations, heated, difficult, sometimes violent negotiations, but negotiations nonetheless. It would take years to work out the details, decades to heal the wounds, centuries to build real trust between our species. But we had time. For the first time in 3 centuries, both species had time. And Elena Voss, the human who wasn't human, stood beside me as we watched the future unfold. Her shadow had returned to normal, matching her body perfectly. "Do you think it will work?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, "but I know something else. Something that might be more important." "What's that?" She smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuinely human. "We are going to find out together." The galaxy had changed. 2 species that had spent 3 centuries as hidden enemies were now reluctant allies. The road ahead would be difficult, dangerous, filled with setbacks and mistakes. But at least it was a road we would travel together, and sometimes that's enough to build hope on.